Yeah, I think we're going to be talking about a really good topic, aren't we? What are fake candidates? I think each of us, we've all been through it. We've been across candidates who don't turn out to be who they are. And I think, we've seen this week with the CFO and the dealing of 25 million. It's pretty crazy. It's drove interest, which is really cool for us because it gives us a lot to talk about and discuss. To pass over to you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. So much has happened since we first connected with like the different stories coming out when it comes to deep fakes. But my background is I have over a decade experience in tech recruiting. I'm the founder of Mialza, which is a fractional recruiting firm for space defense and startup companies. And I've experienced deep fake candidates, I guess is the new term, when I first started recruiting, all the way to most recently, just a couple of weeks ago, trying to decipher if the person I'm talking to is actually a supermodel or an actual software engineer. So it's definitely something that is quite new. Well, let's just say it's an old thing that's getting a new limelight to it because of AI and the recent technologies. So how about yourself?
Yeah, so I have a long path already. I guess I come from the Netherlands originally. I speak 4 languages, so if I hesitate now and then, I'm just trying to find the right word. I've been in high tech more than 30 years. Started out in marketing with National Instruments. It's an Austin-based company. They do hardware software for test and measurement and industrial automation. And then after a break to raise some kids, I went back to work for Indeed.com and set up the Dutch and the Belgian website from scratch. They then offered a nice severance package for the 2020 pandemic at the beginning. So I took that and reinvented myself to become a recruiter. So both at Indeed, I feel the scammers there that we encountered were more on the employer side, trying to get data from the desperate or innocent job seeker, I guess. But since I've been on the recruiting side of things, I've and we're going to share in this talk, but I've seen a lot of different variations on the concept of fake candidates. So I'm very excited that we get to talk about this and get to share with the larger world kind of what you and I, Nick, have seen happen, and hopefully that helps people to catch scams as soon as possible. So Nick, if you don't mind, can you share kind of how we got connected initially? This was through LinkedIn.
Yeah, so let me share my screen here, and you tell me if you can see the post. But this was the initial post. Can you all see that now? So it's
I can see it.
Do not lie to me, period, in the sense that it was just like a point to be made. Just got off the phone with a candidate who used the model's face in a different country, somebody that was extremely popular. You would think of all the 7 billion people and faces they could have used. They used a very famous one. And I made a comment that got a lot of reactions, and I kind of did a follow-up post after that. I don't know if you can see the FBI one now. Can you see that? That was the one that I wanted to get out there because it was introduced by your leader at the organization at the ShortList, sharing this document. I was reading through this FBI PSA that kind of pointed out a lot of the things that I've already kind of experienced, right? And so I went ahead and shared that PSA, but I also highlighted some of the things that I kind of went through, like the unwillingness and the ability to appear on camera, the inconsistencies when I do appear on camera, always looking for excuses to get off and go on a phone call, cheating or on the coding tests or answering employment questionnaires, and just kind of like going off verge and reading things verbatim, like actual Wikipedia definitions in the technology stacks they were using, or blog posts about whatever they were talking about, different pictures online that just didn't match. You can see the difference between who I'm talking to on video versus what's on their profile. Clearly not the same people. A lot of the different things, that I came across, and one of the PSA FBI recommendations, like keep like a recording, including like record in video interviews, which was something that I already started doing with like a tool that I use called MetaView, which is an amazing tool that not only allows you to do AI transcriptions, but also records the conversations that you can share with your management team. So, it's been like, it's been a lot in the sense that, it's gotten to the point where in the last 6 months, I'm seeing a huge frequency and these kind of fraudulent activities and scams coming through as candidates, as being the recruiter interviewing for my clients.
Yeah, and you mentioned 6 months. It's actually been 6 months ago that last PSA was issued by the FBI, and I feel we're always kind of behind the technology, right? People have gotten a lot more sophisticated, even to the point where the scamming is happening live in real time during the interview, and they're not even talking about that. So with technology advancing, it's just gonna get more sophisticated is what I'm thinking. So if you would kind of give me a definition, because there's a lot out there, a lot of talk out there about deep fake and different contexts, but what do you consider a deep fake candidate?
Yeah.
What is your
It
definition?
really comes down to like any one person or organization with like ill intent as a foreign adversary, or like a bad actor who is just like looking to defraud or steal companies' funds, intellectual property, proprietary technologies. In other words, they can harm people with simply phishing tactics, all the way to national security threats, based on the information they could be stealing from your organization.
Yeah. Yeah, I recognize that. So, what about your first encounter with a deepfake candidate? Can you share some of what happened then?
Yeah, that was about 11 years ago when I first got into recruiting, and we ended up placing a candidate on site with one of our clients. And so this fraud was like in real life, IRL, right, versus what you commonly see through video and remote interviews right now. But this person went through the entire interview process, background check cleared and everything. And I don't know to this day how this person got on site, but we ended up placing the person on one of the largest logistical transportation companies in the Southeast. And after about 3 months on working on site, this like a network infrastructure or systems engineer, something like that. After 3 months, the hiring manager is like calling our office, like, what is wrong with this candidate? This person's just screwing things up. Nothing is working. Nothing's reliable. Network time is down. And so, we went to the on-site location in Miami, 3 hours away from the office that I was in at the time. And this person just broke down and said, I'm not the same person you hired. I'm not that I never even interviewed for you. And it comes to the realization that there was a whole scam system in place where they were using BlackBerries at the time to take pictures of the servers they were working on, sending it to their central hub or their, point of origin employer, right? And getting instructions from them on how to, fix things or plug things in, and like just relaying information. Just that alone was such a huge security compromise, like sharing your network infrastructure setup and sending it to an outside third party organization. So that was our very first exposure to that. And unfortunately, even though most states are right to work states, you still kind of want, as an employer, have enough things in place for the sake of liability when you are letting somebody go, because even though it's a right to work state, you always have that risk of like wrongful termination, and you want to do the right thing too by documenting PIPs or yellow slips or disciplinary actions or whatever. So when you think about it, if this person is let go every 3 months and they do it 4 times a year, they're defrauding a client by several $100,000 per year accumulatively. It's an insane concept, but it's been happening for a long time.
Yeah, and you kind of touch on cost there, but there's also, of course, the cost of screening, filtering, interviewing the whole team, and so on. So, if you add all that up, it becomes, several digits, I would say. So, yeah, I also have a late stage example. This person was not hired, but this close, we were ready to send the offer. But I had just this gut feeling like there's something not right. And the company that I did this placement for wanted to hire overseas, lower costs. So we kind of focused on Turkey. And because I had this sense, I started to dig a little bit more in the person's background and found some fake websites in the companies that they listed with dead links. Like, okay, this is not right. And I actually leveraged a Turkish friend, a family friend actually, and inserted him in the interview process. And he basically figured out what the setup was, which was kind of like a front, doing interviews, doing technical tests, acing those, getting the job, and then outsourcing it to a third party. So that was their whole business, just landing the jobs and outsourcing it. So that wasn't exactly what the company was looking for. And they ended up actually completely stopping their program of international recruiting. They just wanted to focus on the U.S., where where they knew and the background checks worked, and they knew what they were dealing with. So. What about more recently? What was, I guess, maybe your latest experience?
Yeah, this happened literally a few weeks ago. I was on a video calls. Because of this recent experience, I try to do as much as I can on video now. But this person was just shoddy internet connection, a lot of latency issues like lag and stuff, and cutting out in and out audio and the picture as well, that we ended up just having a phone conversation. And I had enough of a conversation via video that what someone sounds like, how they articulate their words and whatnot. And when I called, it was a completely different person, like deeper voice, different ways of saying certain words. And it felt like a phishing tactic, in the sense that they have a person going out, applying to roles, getting that initial phone call, and then having that technical issue, and then relay that person, the interviewer, to the person that probably is highly technical, has a high technical aptitude to have that conversation. And if you're not paying attention, you're having a conversation with somebody that is not on the LinkedIn profile that you initially sourced, or the resume that you found on Career Builder or whatever, Indeed or whatever, and you're having a different conversation, and come to the realization that this person that I'm talking to is completely different. And I then realized that the initial person was now going out and fishing for more clients. And this is, when you think about volume and scalability, it's a matter of time until you get somebody on the hook that is willing to pay you money for a job. And it's just not an ethical way of doing business. And I would say it's like a fishing farm, an interview scam farm or something like that,
Yeah. You and I, when we've talked about this, we kind of coined the term interview farm, right? Yeah. So so what you mentioned about the audio, so a lag, that can point to a bad connection, which can then point to maybe a connection outside of the country. You can't just assume, but both of us have encountered that. Or when the lips don't sync with the audio, which could be a case of some voice scrambling, or maybe what I've encountered, Gen AI generating answers to my questions live. So it was just a matter of reading. But with all these tools that the eyeball tracking or non-eyeball tracking, I couldn't really tell that somebody was reading. So it's been very sophisticated. But or maybe somebody has lighting from the back. I've had that happen too. Then it's very hard to actually see their facial features, and that's also for me just another hint or another sign of something's not right. What could you maybe kind of list, or what are the telltale signs of a fake candidate in your book?
Yeah, some of the telltale signs I would say is, like, recently I had an interview with like several people, and it looked completely different from their LinkedIn profiles, like I mentioned before. But it wasn't just like similar faces and passing, kind of like when I was younger using fake IDs to go into clubs or get a drink. It wasn't even close. It was completely different people. But I'm seeing more and more people use like AI generated cartoon faces as their LinkedIn profiles, but the initial face that they kind of derived that image, you can tell is completely different. They might be skinnier or heavier, or there might be a light beard where the person I'm talking to on video doesn't have a beard, or completely different color schemes and skin tones and whatnot. But you kind of have to do like reverse searches on these profiles to see where the initial profile picture might have come from, and that kind of points you to different directions that you're kind of saying, doesn't match with the person or even their name. Many times people claim to be like in coffee shops and like apologize for the noise, and I mean, I've been in loud coffee shops, right? But this just doesn't seem like a coffee shop that everybody's consistently talking as if it sounded like every person in the coffee shop was on an interview, right? There was no organic conversations in the background. And, you come across like this background image that's blurry within the coffee shop. And what's the point of like blurring your background if you already know and you're telling somebody that you're in the coffee shop? And also like come across people that kind of seem like they're working in an interview firm, like we discussed before, where I've seen people like lean back from another desk and look at that person's monitor and kind of like, oh my gosh, that person got an interview. They're like leaning and being nosy, but the AI background tool kind of screwed up and showed their face, right, or showed their body leaning into the range of that field of view. So it's a bunch of different ways to kind of like pick up these little like these red flags, and it's always good to know what those signals are, so you're more wary about the possibility that you might be talking to like a fake candidate or a deep fake.
Yeah. I had it happen too. That somebody sitting next to my candidate was also having an interview at the same time, and then you're like, what? Is this an interview for him, right? So this one example that you gave of the model, the picture on LinkedIn, I thought that was interesting because I guess you found out it was some famous model in South Korea. And what do we know, right? We may know, like a friend of mine uses a Keanu Reeves picture, like, okay, duh, we know. But I wouldn't know who are famous in other countries and playing a joke on me that way. But yeah, it was smart of you to kind of do that reverse search. Multiple LinkedIn profiles is something that I've seen, like, same name, same picture, multiple profiles. That's clearly a flag. I've also seen, recently I had this bout, like a whole week, was a technical role, one after the other. I was starting to get like, am I paranoid? What's wrong with all these people? But I noticed that it's very similar LinkedIn profiles. They all used to work at Shutterfly, 1 or 2 years ago. They all were connected to each other. This is, you kind of have to know what to look for. And once you go through this, but there's definitely a lot of different cues. I know you're very technology savvy, Nick. So what kind of tools or what kind of technology have you seen people use?
Well, I've noticed recently some like TikTok videos of people sharing clips of other like roommates or whatnot taking interviews and having their phone set up next to their camera and kind of reading or kind of like giving an answer based on what the interviewer said. I've seen a lot of those videos. I've seen, like, I have personally used tools that help me with post-production videos on like eye tracking. So if I'm reading a script, it kind of fixes my eyes. But now with the recent article that we just found out about AI being used to completely mask somebody's face and voice and convince people to send, millions of dollars, and you were thinking you were talking to board members or executive and team members. So it's really quite interesting with the rise of large language models and AI and like AI tools. It's just been wild to see like the different technologies and how quickly they're accelerating and how easy is accessibility to these individuals to use against us, for sure.
And you recently showed me, I think you called it Descript, like eyeball tracking. Can you explain what that does?
Yeah, so it's like an editing tool, right? So when you're able to kind of like make videos and edit the videos like as if it was a document, but it has a feature. I have a problem with my eyes wandering when I'm thinking, right? And so it doesn't look all that great when I'm making post-production videos. So I use this tool to kind of get my eyes back on track. And that's a post-production tool, but that doesn't mean the technology is not available for real-time interview use. And that's what we're seeing more and more of on a daily basis with these articles coming out talking about, like I said earlier, the face is not only their eyes are being masked, but their entire face, including lip movement, is being masked by somebody else's face on it.
Yeah. I mean, technology, definitely. Another thing I've seen, and this actually happened to be this badge, this Shutterfly badge, say, they were all using VPNs that were very similar in IP address. So, it was very clear that they were all connected somehow, even to, technology-wise. So Not sure where they actually were physically, located, but yeah, that's and I think I already touched on voice cloning, Gen AI, all this stuff. So when you realize, Nick, that you're dealing with a fake candidate, or you have suspicions, like very or grounded suspicions, what do you do? How do you what are some ways that you remove people from your pipeline?
I've kind of done like certain things, implement certain things. I guess you can call them filters or just like non-negotiables going forward. It's just kind of being forced into it. But like I said earlier, the reverse image search for profile pictures on the candidate, make sure that you're talking to the same person that's on the profile. Like personally for me, I'm striving to make all interviews via video. It gives me an opportunity to kind of like hyper analyze the where they're answering things, see if their eyes are wandering off and reading scripts or down to like an app or whatever, and making sure that that is a priority for me when I'm interviewing these individuals. But if they're not able to do so, just tell them like, hey, let's go ahead and reschedule and fix your technical difficulties, because that's how adamant I am with being that this is my own like non-negotiable, that if you want to interview with Nick Roman, you're going to have to do it with video. Just like the time before where people had to go into the office and do face-to-face meetings, that is the new norm for myself, right? Like if you're having technical difficulties, get it fixed. I'll take it with a grain of salt and give you the benefit of the doubt. Get it fixed, and we'll reschedule the call, because I'm still very interested in talking to you. If they're not able to do that, you move on. If they have to be local to your market or a place that you're very familiar with, ask them about questions about the local geographic area. Like, oh, Orlando, which part do you like more, Orlando or Disney or Universal? Which is your favorite ride? Like, those are two parks I'm very familiar with. If you've traveled a lot and you know a particular area, like you being where you're from, I'm sure you've seen a lot, and you can talk to different geographical like landmarks in certain places, and you can kind of test them on the spot. If they're there, they would know, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I have a good one on that. Sorry to interrupt you, but I just thought of this last night. It was also the Shutterfly badge, but the one of those people claimed to be living in Helotes, Texas. Who knows? I'd never heard of Helotes, Texas, but it so happened I'd been there a week before, because it's close to where my son goes to college. So for my first time, it's like, I don't know, a dozen people right by a dozen houses by the highway, and one big Tex-Mex restaurant that we went to. So, of course I asked, oh, how long have you lived there? 6 years. This guy had lived there for 6 years. Like, okay, well, what's the name again of that Tex-Mex place? I honestly couldn't remember. And he's like, what Tex-Mex place? He had no clue what I've said. I mean, you can't miss the Tex-Mex in Helotes. It's the only thing that's there. If you're hungry, you go there. So it was interesting, and I knew immediately. But but when I realize or when I have a dark suspicion, say, I typically now I've switched to the mode where I request referrals. And I've gotten some pushback on that. One person said, well, referrals are usually at the end. Okay, well, yeah, sorry, but we've had to deal with a lot of fake candidates lately, and we are moving that up in the process. And typically what happens, you hear nothing, nothing anymore. And in one case, I got a referral that was another fake candidate. So I'm very specific in I need this person that is your reference to actually be working at the company where they say they are, and I need to see a company email. So that basically shuts down the whole issue, or it has every time for me.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Nick, did you want to add any more? I think we're up to about 30 or so minutes. Any other thoughts along these lines?
I would say one last filter that I would use is when you're dealing with scammers or people that are fraudulently, acting as certain particular, candidates that they're not really in the real world setting, that if they're doing that at scale, they're very sloppy with their work. And so a lot of times there's not a lot of alignment between the resume that you're seeing versus their LinkedIn profile. Somebody that's actually looking for a job does a pretty good job making sure that the dates are matching, the order of the companies are matching, and things like that. So take that extra 15 seconds to make a comparison of like side-by-side comparison if they're matching. And if there's a lot of inconsistencies, that's another red flag about this person not caring about what the profile looks like, because their job is to be fraudulent, and bad actors are generally not good people to begin with. And if they're not good people, they don't care, right? So, and they're not, detail driven on that sense. Not to say that there isn't scammers and fraudsters, deep fake candidates out there that are taking the time to make sure those things work, but the vast majority of them are just on dial in and dial in, looking for the next hook to pass on to their partners to get them scammed into moving somebody into an on-site situation. So, or working on a project million thousands of dollars. So, just being wary about different ways people can, take advantage of people, and just situational awareness is probably the best description I can say when it comes to having these conversations with these people.
And what you just said actually reminded me of two more things. Like one, I don't feel like we've been very clear as to what the motives could be. I mean, it's just guessing from our perspective, but FBI also points out, it's security, getting access to data, getting maybe in interviews some confidential information. And the other point, I think we talked about this before offline, salaries, like negotiating on salaries is something that we both found that these people are not very good at. They seem to be all, not all, but there is a magic number they all seem to stick to. And then if you discuss 30, 40K lower, oh, that's fine, right? And you've encountered that, right? Or actually, Kyle, you mentioned it too.
Yeah, I think the one that's been most recent for me is I had one candidate I spoke to. I mentioned that the salary was 120. He asked to push to 125. We then kind of spoke to the client, and they had renegotiated on what they were looking. They were actually going to push it to 130. I mentioned to the candidate, well, it's actually now 130. He's like, okay, I want 135. And I was like, makes no sense. You're asking for 125 yesterday. What's changed? And he's just like, oh, I just want that. And that's some of the stuff that I've been experiencing lately. So yeah, it's been interesting.
What have you done in the last 24 hours to justify a $10,000 increase in your bottom line? Like, did you invent something new? Or did you put out a new product feature with that? There's not a consistency in their logic. It's the logic is the only consistency is how much more money I can get out of these people.
Well, also one thing I've seen is like underbidding. I won't name any numbers, but asking for an amount that's clearly under market. It's like, where's this random number coming from, right? Just I guess my assumption is just to get the job, just to score the job. So anyway, I feel like we can talk hours and hours about this. It's unfortunately part of our day-to-day life these days. Kyle, any other things you want us to talk about or mention?
I did have a couple of questions, I'm not going to lie, but I suppose, Elliot's joined us, so Elliot, I'm guessing you've got a bit of an interest in this topic, so did you have any questions that you wanted to ask the guys?
No, this has been, and sorry, I didn't know if video was appropriate because I'm not like on the panel, so sorry if that was a little bit distracting. But no, I definitely interested because I had some experience. I moved over to the professional services world in terms of recruiting, and I felt like it was a bit more prevalent. I don't know if it's a margin thing or, like you said, like underbidding or whatever, but or just the fact that you have people on the surface that are maybe a little bit more polished, and they're actually feeding business back to their consulting business that you had no idea they had. And so I actually encountered that a couple times, not the fake interview that would go and get like the candidate I was talking to was very good and they were intentionally going to do the work, but then you would find out later on that they would be sharing that work amongst their other employees, so I feel like you can get it from different angles, but so I was curious if that's something like that you've encountered. It's not actually a person that's going to try to impersonate a future employee that doesn't exist or that isn't real, right? But actually they plan to stick with the job, but they're going to be doing triple employment or quadruple employment.
Yeah, Elliot, there's like, it's like that moonlighting, right? That you see on blind people taking multiple jobs, but there was an article from like years ago about somebody from IBM that was outsourcing their entire job. They were winning awards, like most reliable employee, whatever, and they were in the server room, and they just always, making deliverables and getting things out there. And come to find out that somebody somewhere in compliance looked into the IP and saw that there was logins coming in from a different country, across the way, and this person essentially was just paying somebody else $20,000 or $30,000 of their already high salary, and they were just hanging out on Reddit the entire time while their entire job was being outsourced, and whoever was doing the work was brilliant. They were really, really good because indirectly they were winning awards. But this guy the recognition for those awards, and they finally caught him. I mean, I think it was like a 3 to 4 year operation. This guy was just laying back and making a killing.
Yeah, I was my most recent job, like I was in a new ecosystem. It was not just consulting, but it was Salesforce consulting, recruiting work. So I didn't have a lot of good contacts. So I was just, grinding in terms of finding new contacts. And so, early on, I was like, anybody who was like, yeah, I'll talk to you. Cause it was, it wasn't 2023, it was 2021 when the market was pretty competitive, right? You were trying to just touch base with people, network, figure it out. And like, I'd talk to people, and a lot of the telltale signs that you both mentioned in terms of poor video connection or weird lighting or poor eye contact, those were common things I ran into, but I felt like that was my first real intro, despite having done recruiting for a while, because most of mine was on the phone, right? You just didn't notice it right away.
Right.
It's interesting as well. Like, I'd love to get your guys' perspective on, like, when you come across these deepfake candidates, would you approach them and perhaps tell them you know that they're a fake candidate, or would you let it ride and just not speak to them again?
I haven't done any actionable vigilante work behind it other than just ignoring and moving along. But maybe somebody does need to make a blacklist. But then you run the risk of accusing some of their accusations of somebody being a deep fake when you're not quite sure. It's just too many red flags for you to feel comfortable moving forward. Doesn't necessarily mean they are. They just might be just a super sketchy person, and it's hard. It's hard, right? So, but I think there should be some sort of tool of verification. You know what? Like LinkedIn partnered up with Clear.
Yeah.
So that could be something that could be more widespread used. That I would see if I came across a candidate that had that badge, that Clear badge, I would feel much more comfortable knowing that the person I'm talking to is who they say they are.
And I wanted to add on that. So I see your point, Nick. Like you don't want to just accuse somebody, but having worked at Indeed, and I'm assuming LinkedIn works very similarly. You can report a person, and I have actually done that. And then they will go in depth with whatever tools they have to figure out. Typically, Kyle, though, to answer your question, asking for references does the trick, and and I don't hear from them anymore, and they're on my personal blacklist at that point.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that I've picked up on actually in the last couple of weeks, have you come across, say, candidates that you've been speaking to? You go back to speak to them, and it just comes up like LinkedIn member, and then you can't actually contact the person. I think that's a pretty good indication of
yes
being kicked off.
Yeah, and this is what, so I've seen this. So the people that I've actually reported, I kind of go back a couple days later, and some then have been blocked by LinkedIn, and it says LinkedIn member, or this profile is no longer available.
Remember talking about being sloppy when you're a bad actor and you're trying to run an operation at scale. They don't tend to go back on the profile and see if things are working. Some of the links, I've 404 has been for the ones that I've been very suspicious to begin with, and I click through their LinkedIn profile, it's a 404 error page for their profile. They got banned before I can get to it, right? So, and they may not know that yet. It may take them weeks to months to realize, like, oh my gosh, I've been doing all this work. No wonder I haven't got any leads because my fake profile's been knocked down.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
I had one. I have to share this too. Typically, and I don't want to pinpoint any particular country or culture, but it's these folks that we're talking about. The majority are non-native English speakers. So I will ask, what is your first language? And I will always remember this one answer I got. Oh, something Asian. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know what your first language is? Is it Mandarin? Is it Hindi? Is it, what is your language? Something Asian. I thought that was funny. I mean, it's not funny in the scheme of things, but.
I talk this region. That's what they were saying.
Yeah. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
I think
sorry. I have to add, it was something Asian, maybe. Something. So like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose you guys touched on it before, but I suppose what is your method to determine if someone is actually a fake candidate?
It's tough, right? Because there are little subtle things and you kind of develop a sixth sense for that. And I feel like in this call, we try to kind of outline a couple of things to look for, to watch for. But it's still going to be I think ultimately your own gut feeling.
Intuition. Yeah. I mean, really, and I mean, people kind of pick up on those social cues and conversations. And that's why I want to do my interviews in video, because you can't, like, language is so much more than voice. It's hand language and it's body language and it's the environment that you're in and all that stuff, right? The way you kind of communicate. But yeah, just picking up enough signals to realize, like, you know what, it's not worth my time or my client's time to move forward. In all reality, we want to help as many people as we can get an opportunity, but it's also a numbers game too. Like, we also have to serve who we're serving, which is our clients and ourselves, in the sense that we got to make some money to pay the bills as well. And if you're not willing to take a step back and realize this is not worth moving forward, you run the risk of not moving somebody that generally is interested in the opportunity. But it's not up to you to help every single person to make sure that they're presenting themselves at 100% capacity every single time, right? And so maybe putting out content like this or training material and people being engaged in LinkedIn conversations to better understand what employers and individuals are looking for when they're looking to do business or negotiate an opportunity with them. So.
Well, ultimately, it backfires on you, because you had that one example where you actually placed a candidate who turned out to be a complete fraud. Well, it's
yeah.
You know what I'm saying, right?
We had to backfill that cost us time and money and do it for free. And it was such a big financial impact on the client that it took us months to patch up that relationship, right? Because they're like,
yeah.
How did they get through? Then you have to kind of like educate the client, like this could happen to anybody. It's when you're at this scale, something's going to slip through the cracks,
Yep.
I suppose at that point, a good question to ask is, who does the fault lie with? Because you're doing the first screen, but that candidate's also got to go through and talk to the hiring manager, engineering managers, directors, VPs, potentially C levels. So, you're the one getting the brunt of it, but ultimately, who does that lie with? Because if you're getting the tools to by the company invested to identify them straight away, of course that doesn't take up their time. So is that your fault being the first point of contact, or is that their fault for also not picking it up?
No, I think the best thing is to move on and learn from that mistake, and it's not productive to try to, it's like that old saying, every time you point a finger, three more are pointing back at you, so like it's a kind of a holistically take responsibility as both you, the recruiter, and the interviewing team and the person moving them forward. And you're better off just moving on and learning from those from that mistake or that scenario and try to apply what you've learned on the next hire, right? And just keep moving forward. Because the more time you spend blaming, this is more time spent, company time spent having unproductive conversations and not getting that seat backfilled.
And ultimately, at least from my perspective, it's the bad actors' fault, right? They are the ones who are trying to scheme the system, and that's, what can you do against that? That's what we're trying to figure out.
Yeah, I was going to say, sadly, I think it just kind of falls into the grouping of a bad hire. Like, is it worse? Yeah, I guess, right? Because it could have a much worse consequences. But as somebody in the TA profession, like it's chalked up the same way as a poor hire that could have been a number of other many things there.
If there's a neglect in moving somebody forward, but if you did everything you could, treating somebody with respect and dignity and doing background checks, and they still ended up not being the person you ended up hiring or being somebody else, then, again, it falls into the cost of business, right? Let's fix the problem, fix those loopholes, buy whatever technology or services like you guys are offering, and move forward.
Yeah, and I suppose from a company owner perspective or a co-founder, CEO, CTO, what's the financial implications of a deepfake candidate, I suppose? Could you shed any more light on that?
Mireille, I mean,
well, what you want me to talk numbers, or I mean,
yeah.
I think every case is unique in that sense, right? I mean, depends on what you spend on it already, depends what the damage has been. Are they walking away with some confidential information? I mean, that I think it's a case by case scenario, and that kind of requires a deep dive for which is what ShortList offers, right? Something we can do and kind of follow up on that.
Yeah, because I know we've obviously seen this week with the extreme level of it, with the 25 million that the deepfake has taken. So I suppose that is the extreme, but I think you guys touched on it before. The time through each process. The cost of, say, not only yourself interviewing them, Nick, but the engineering manager. That's, say, a couple of hours out of their time a week, and then it all adds up at the end of the day. You only need a couple of deepfake candidates in the pipeline, and it's burning a cost into their time where they could be, being productive and earning the company money at the end of the day. What are some of the roles that you've seen them applying to? I imagine it's a broad spectrum, but where have you come across them the most?
What I've seen mostly is on the technical side, I guess, software engineers, developers, QA. Yeah, that's kind of the niche. And I do think that there's a link with just getting access to the systems, to the data, getting insights in terms of the ability to get proprietary information. I think it's related because I haven't seen it for other roles. And I know, Nick, what's your experience?
I would say the same. A lot of QA engineers, data engineering, anything that has to do with, pretty much everything, all across the entire spectrum of tech, in the sense of engineering, where they have access to documents and Google Docs and, things that they can remember. They don't necessarily download anything to steal your data. It can be done through a picture screen or a screen cap, or taking a picture of proprietary information, and then selling that information or using it on another client or whatever. So it's definitely, my entire experience with the deep fakes or these fake candidates has been through the technical engineering ecosystem across talent.
It's interesting. Elliot had a different example, right? You said professional services, Elliot?
Yeah, I mean, still more on the still on the technical side. I was just going to say, I think you can group, remote and tech, like anything that's going to allow them to not maybe have to show up in person. I think, I don't know if this is a telltale sign, but the company I was just working for required a certain amount of travel. So if somebody was really adamant about not traveling, and a remote role like that, that might be a sign. Obviously, I don't want to travel either for my job, so I can't say it. It's not a yes no, but it could be another box that you could check. But I think remote tech just gives them a lot of outs to hide who they really are.
Yeah, and I suppose that causes a lot of the problem now, isn't it? Because everything's opened up to remote, and remote is so popular. It's so difficult to even manage that, and where people are based. We've seen candidates whose actual address and billing address is maybe in Arizona, and they've been living in Dubai, other places. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say any corp to corp is higher frequency with these kind of scams as well, where there's hourly transactions between them, the third party, you as an agency, and the client, or directly to the client. There's a lot of tomfoolery going on there with like consistencies and who they're talking to, and mistakes being done. But don't forget, like, a successful fake candidate only needs to be there for a day or two to take some money away from you. Like, if they can get on the books and get paid for a week, it's still mission accomplished, right? Now the goal is to extend that for months before they get caught. But if they can get that same person employed 10 times a week and get paid by the week and before they get caught, before any red flags or discrepancies or whatnot, they are successful in what they've done, right? So accumulatively, we're the economy as a whole is affected because maybe my company lost $3,000 versus $30,000, but $3,000 across multiple different industries and different companies. That does affect the overall, like, I guess you can say the overall revenue of that particular industry that they're kind of working in.
I do want to add on that, because maybe I defer in terms of opinion a little bit. I truly think it's not about the money, it's about the access. Getting, into the company or through the interview process, getting some proprietary information, confidential information, getting access to the systems, the databases, and maybe, beyond that, what are the clients, the client list, what access do they have? I really, truly think that is the major motivation, but speculation.
That goes back to the FBI, PSA, and also the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the Republic of Korea, which is probably the equivalency to the United States FBI, putting out a very similar PSA around the same time period, right? So you're talking, I think deepfakes can be small, interview farm operations to national security issues or corporate espionage or like really big deals, right? So
yep. I mean, call me paranoid, but that seems to be the only logical reason from where I'm sitting.
Yeah, valid.
You got me scared. I've just assumed it's been more money financially. Just like it's. I mean, couple months of being paid six-figure salary when you're not really qualified. Love it.
Well, of course, that's out there. And what you describe, what you're dealing with, outsourcing it and so on. Sure. But ultimately, again, you're dealing with people who have access to your company or, the company that you place them at, that they don't really know who they are. So who can you trust? So anyway, getting into a rabbit hole here. But I don't think it's a couple $1,000s. I think it's data.
I'm sure security people, InfoSec, they love the sound of where your head's at. Like think the worst, risk. There's a lot of it out there.
It's not hard when you think about how so many startup companies are supporting prime government contract companies that are supporting the government directly, and if they can get in that way, they have access to privy information that, I mean, there's cleared, and then there's like, I forget what it's called, but it's like citizens cleared. Essentially, they are given access to sensitive information, and it can go as far as operations happening across different countries that are supposed to be secret, right? So it could be some. I think it's a combination of both, but I think the big picture is foreign adversaries for sure. What you're saying, so.
I live in the DC metro area, so I know all about that. I have conversations with friends that I'll never know what they do.
I'd be interested to see what comes out of those conversations in Virginia, right? Like, those contractors with the government and what they're kind of seeing in the DC area as well about deep fakes and is there a threat that they're kind of working against and how that's affecting them and their ability to get these huge contracts, but then fill the seats for those contracts.
Yeah, on the clearance level, that I would be curious to see how they could penetrate and disguise that part. But at least for some of the non-cleared stuff that's still pretty sensitive, yeah, there's probably some element of that.
Yeah,
that's definitely got to be the tagline for the whole video, hasn't it? What are deepfake candidates? They're stealing your data. Well, no, I think that's pretty much everything, isn't it? I appreciate you joining us as well, Elliot, and getting involved. There's a lot of links in the chat as well, so these were actually shared by the guys beforehand. So if you wanted to check them out, it kind of goes over a lot of what was discussed. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it, isn't it? Anyone want to add anything else?
Stay on top of the market. Keep an eye on what stories are being put out there, and just be vigilant in protecting your time and your client's time. Or if you're not working for a client, you're working directly for an employer. Every interaction, unfortunately, has to be kind of vetted at a certain capacity, and had this like in the back of your mind, but that am I talking to the person that I'm meant to be talking to, that I initially reached out to? And I think once you have those particular insights on what a deep fake is and how to identify those individuals, you can do a better job serving your employer, your clients, and making sure that you're doing the right thing for the actual job seeker themselves.
And I'd like to add, I know, Kyle, you're going to post this recording, so people seeing this, please share. What are you seeing? What are some good resources you have? What do we not know about? That this way we can all learn.
Right.
Yeah, I think it'll be good. We can share this out. Anyone interested, we can get maybe a bit of a group chat going on. Everyone can share their experiences and what they're seeing as well. I think it's a great time to get involved on the topic. We touched on it a few times, but that candidate or deepfake candidate or deepfake that stole 25 million, we're heading into a scary time where we've seen AI that can mimic a family's voice and pretend to be kidnapped, for example. It's sky's the limit, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, really appreciate your time. I thought that was really insightful.
Thanks, Kyle. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Elliot. Nice meeting you.
Thank you,
Nice meeting you too.
Take care. Bye bye.